Now in Brojo we've been talking a lot about views of that men have about women, their perspectives and beliefs, and how that affects our interactions and our relationships. And we've identified that many, if not most men, have at least a few very unhelpful beliefs that get in the way of them having loving and meaningful connections with women. When it comes to having a look at where some of these beliefs come from, we need look no further than the Red Pill movement. I don't think any other philosophy or community has put more effort into trying to categorize and understand women as a group. Now, for those of you who aren't already familiar with Red Pill, it's essentially a self-development community, very loosely formed and based. There's no kind of one source. It's based on the idea like the red pill from the Matrix, the truth and the knowledge of the world and functioning as a man with that truth. And a section of that, a subsection of that, is the truth about women. And today we're going to be reviewing a guy named Rollo Tomassi. He's considered one of the forefathers, you might say, of the Red Pill movement, particularly the Red Pill view of women and dating and relationships. And his book, The Rational Male, has been almost treated like a Bible in the Red Pill community. So today we're going to have a look at the 9 rules that Tomassi came up with that a man should follow every day if he wishes to have a good life, in particular in relation to women and dating and relationships. Rule number 1. Frame is everything. Always be aware of the subconscious balance of whose frame in which you are operating. Always control the frame, but resist giving the impression that you are. Now, essentially, I agree with the first half of this. Frame is everything. Your perspective of the world is what turns neutral into reality. How you see a situation determines what that situation means to you, the value judgments and so on. And learning how to manage your own frame, learning how to manage your perspective and your philosophy will determine your quality of life. Of that I have no doubt. And whether or not you're manipulated by other people will be dependent on who has the strongest frame in any given situation. The part I don't like is the bit about always controlling the frame while hiding that this is what you're doing. This is a very fancy way of saying be manipulative, and in particular be deceptively manipulative. For a man to live by this rule is for a man to live a life of deception and control. And only an unconfident man would try to control others. So with this rule, while I agree that absolutely you should manage your own frame, which is the essence of confidence and philosophical living, trying to control the frame of others and manage other people is a form of influence and manipulation that only people lacking in confidence would bother with. Rule number 2. Never, under pain of death, honestly or dishonestly, reveal the number of women you've slept with or explain any detail of your sexual experiences with them to a current lover. This might be one of all the 9 rules that I disagree with the most. As those of you who follow my work know, I advocate full honesty and integrity. And this is one of the biggest problems I had with the whole Red Pill philosophy when I first reviewed it, and they're linked below in this post, you can see it. The problem I had was they often talked about integrity, and then in the same breath they'd talk about being manipulative and deceptive and hiding things and keeping secrets. And for me, those are counterpoints. If you want to be a man of integrity who respects himself and has the confidence to be who he is and let others judge him and take the consequences of that, then you have to be honest about everything. As soon as you hide something, you're doing so for an outcome, which means you're scared. So for you to hide your sexual history with your current lover is because you're scared of their reaction. It's a form of manipulation. You're trying to avoid presenting them with any information that might make them dislike you in some way. And a confident guy wouldn't avoid that. Rule number 3. Any woman who makes you wait for sex, or by her actions implies she is making you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait. This is an interesting one. For a start, it has the problem that I have with pretty much all Red Pill philosophy on women, and that is it thinks all women are the same. So anything they do is always done for the same reason as any other woman would do it. And this is one of those examples. Like if a woman withholds sex from you, it must be for the same reason that any woman ever withholds sex. I just don't believe that's true. I'll give you an example from my own life, which isn't evidence of anything, it's just an experience. But I was actually sleeping with a girl who was, shall we say, fantastic in bed. And she was making another guy wait, a guy that she was dating and trying to get to know for a relationship. And I was just kind of like the bit on the side, keeping her busy kind of thing while she found her guy she actually wanted to be with long term, and I was okay with that. This was all out in the open. Now, I have no doubt that once she finally relented with this guy, it would have been fantastic for him. I knew from experience. What I'd say with this rule is if any woman is making you wait for sex, talk to her about it. Find out why she's doing it. If you're okay with the reasons for her doing it, then continue. And if you're not, then don't. Rather than just assuming you know, or assuming all women doing this are somehow bad in some way and this is going to go badly for you, use honesty to push it into a yes or a no. This is one of those rules that is designed to protect the man from rejection and failure, whereas a confident man thrives on rejection and failure. Rule number 4. Never, under any circumstance, live with a woman you aren't married to or are not planning to marry within 6 months. This one's kind of a weird one. It tells me that he's had some sort of really bad experience or experiences living with women. This one sounds very personal. And that was one of the problems I had with Red Pill when I reviewed their material quite extensively, is this echo chamber of men who have had bad experiences with women just bouncing off each other and coming to the conclusion that their experiences represented all women, when the truth was it was self-fulfilling prophecy. These were guys who attracted the lowest quality of women, and so they had the worst experiences. That being said, living with a woman is something that is, I agree, you need to be careful about it. I would say it's kind of the other way around. That is, if you want to marry a woman, live with her first. Okay, you should live with a woman for at least a year before you decide whether or not to propose. That's how I would put this rule. By living together, I mean absolute honesty, full vulnerability, everything out in the open. You fart in front of each other, you know all each other's bad habits, you don't try to make the other person like you, you're just you. Like the worst you could possibly be, in a way, so that they know what they're getting themselves into and you know what you're getting yourself into. I would never commit to someone long term without knowing what it's like to be with them all the time. And it's a great thing, if after a year of you both being yourselves, you fucking love it, that's a great reason to get married. You're probably an awesome fit, as long as you weren't being fake. And you've also got to understand that living with each other changes the dynamic. It takes the thrill out of seeing each other. So you've got to be prepared for that shift to happen before you move in with somebody. So in a way, I kind of agree with Tomassi here, which is know what you're getting into if you're going to move in with a woman. But I wouldn't say never do it unless you're going to be married. Okay, do it to see if you want to get married. Rule number 5. Never allow a woman to be in control of the birth. What the fuck? Rule number 6. Women are utterly incapable of loving a man in the way that a man expects to be loved. In its simplicity, this speaks volumes about the condition of men. It accurately expresses a pervasive nihilism that men must either confront and accept or be driven insane in denial for the rest of their lives when they fail to come to terms with the disillusionment. Women are incapable of loving men in a way that a man idealizes as possible, in a way he thinks she should be capable of. Probably I need more context as to where this comes from and what he's writing about, but I tentatively agree. And what I mean by agree is that most men expect something from a woman that is not realistic. Knowing the Red Pill philosophy as I do, what he's probably talking about is this idea that women are incapable of unconditional love. That's what they believe, and I think that's total fucking horseshit. What I do believe, however, is that men bring very unreasonable expectations into their relationships with women, as women do with men, and men with men and women with women and all their variations. And that is, you bring the expectation that this person is going to complete you, that all your pain and suffering will be taken away by this person, when actually that's your fucking job. So before you get into any sort of long-term, loving, committed relationship with a woman, understand she cannot fill your cup. You have to do that. You should be full by the time you get to her. Don't get into a relationship if you need the other person to complete you. Rule number 7. It is always time and effort better spent developing new, fresh, prospective women than it will ever be in attempting to reconstruct a failed relationship. Never root through the trash once the garbage has been dragged to the curb. You get messy, your neighbours see you do it, and what you thought was worth digging for is never as valuable as you thought it was. Probably of all the rules, this is the one I agree with the most. I wouldn't have worded it in his way, exactly, but the idea that if something didn't work out with somebody, trying to reinvent that is just not going to happen. Your time is much better spent finding someone where you don't have to put that kind of effort into making it work. That being said, in the interim, As you look for new people, you should also be developing yourself, so it becomes easier and easier to create a great connection because you become a great person that's easy to connect with. But absolutely, I have a rule: never go back to an ex. There's 3.5 billion of either gender out there, so you're not exactly scarce, okay? Most of them are single, desperately single. Look at online dating, it's packed full of people. Trying to reconstruct a failed relationship, as he puts it, absolutely I agree, that is a total waste of time. It's like eating something that you're allergic to and hoping the next time you eat it that it's going to be fine. Rule number 8. Always let a woman figure out why she won't fuck you. Never do it for her. An integral part of maintaining the feminine imperative, as the societal imperative involves keeping women as the primary sexual selectors. As I've detailed in many prior comments and posts, this means that a woman's sexual strategy necessitates that she be in as optimized a condition as her capacity, attractiveness, allows for her to choose from the best males available to satisfy that strategy. I found this one a little difficult to understand, and as I'm sure this video is mostly being watched by red pill people who disagree with me, please in the comments below help me understand what this rule is actually saying. The first part seems to make sense. Like, you don't need to talk a woman out of being attracted to you. Just let her decide for herself. That I couldn't agree with more. In fact, I wouldn't try to talk her into being attracted to you either. Let her decide by you just being yourself. That one I'm okay with. The second one's a little more convoluted. It's about this red pill philosophy or idea that women are the sexual selectors. That basically men are begging for sex and women get to decide, like queens, who they're gonna fuck. And this is very important to people in the red pill community for some reason. What I would talk about more is focusing on being the exception, which is becoming the selector. I think everybody, regardless of gender, should be the selector in their own life. You should never be begging. I think it says more about men than it does about women that looking good physically, attractiveness, as you might put it, is all a woman has to do to have a massive selection of guys available. It speaks to our own blindness and materialism. If you really want to turn the tables on this, if you want to make it so women aren't powerful just because they look good, then become someone who's selective based on values. Make sure that while somebody might be attractive to you, that isn't case closed. You need to know more about them. They need to be worth your time and effort. They need to be someone whose values aligned with you, even if all you want to do is sleep with them. If all men were able to hold themselves to this level of integrity, this whole dynamic about beauty equals power would be destroyed. Rule number 9. Never self-deprecate under any circumstance. This is a kiss of death that you self-initiate and is the antithesis of the prize mentality. Once you've accepted yourself and presented yourself as a complete douche, there is no going back to confidence with a woman. Never appeal to a woman's sympathies. Her sympathies are given by her own volition, never when they are begged for. Women despise the obligation of sympathy. Nothing kills arousal like pity. Even if you don't seriously consider yourself pathetic, it never serves your best interests to paint yourself as pathetic. Self-depreciation is a misguided tool for the AFC, that's average frustrated chump, and not something that would even occur to an alpha. In general, yes, I agree, but not for the reasons of making women attracted to you. Self-deprecating or talking only badly about yourself and kind of highlighting your faults and punishing yourself for your weaknesses is something I don't recommend. Because it's self-fulfilling prophecy. You will make it true. If you talk about yourself as a loser, you'll become a loser. I used to talk about myself as someone who women wouldn't love, and so women didn't love me. And that was me causing that. That being said, the problem I have with this rule, like all the others, it's all based on trying to make more women attracted to you. And that's one of the main issues I have with red pill philosophy altogether, is their confidence is dependent on women. And yet they talk about, on the other hand, how it shouldn't be. They're so contradictory there, just like they talk about integrity all the time and then constantly advocate manipulation. But he's dead right here, I think. If you're self-pitying as a way of communicating with somebody, the last thing they're going to feel is attracted to you. And there's nothing really more repulsive than someone trying to drag you into sympathy. Someone trying to make you feel sorry for them. You hate it, so don't do it to others. Remember, a woman is not there to cure you of your insecurities. That's your fucking job, not hers. That being said, I do think you should always be honest, which means being honest about your weaknesses and your faults and your failures. But rather than being self-deprecating, like, oh, I'm such a fucking loser, you can be like, I've got some struggles and I'm working on them. You can take responsibility for it. Like, I don't want your pity, I don't want your sympathy, I got this. I'm just telling you so that you know who I am, and so that you can judge me accurately and decide if we're a good fit. but I don't want you to fix me. I don't want you to fucking pat on the back, give me a hug. I'm just letting you know who I am. For a real connection to happen, a woman has to know all of you, the dark and the light. If she only knows the good stuff, then you'll have a superficial connection at best, and that's where hypergamy takes place. Because of your superficial connection, she's just going to look to trade up all the time. But if you have a rich, meaningful connection by letting her in and seeing everything, not self-deprecating, but just honest and responsible, I mean, she's never going to leave you for another guy. So it was interesting seeing these rules. Some I agree with, some I just agree with the gist, but the wording was a bit fucked. And others I just thought were outright, borderline misogyny or just delusions. The biggest problems I've already talked about in my review of Red Pill. Problems like thinking all women are the same when actually there are a broad spectrum of personalities from feminine through to hardcore masculine. The other issue, I guess, is just this focus on it. That was one of the main issues I had with Red Pill altogether, was the definition of a good man was defined by someone who can handle women and is unaffected by women and is attractive to women. It's all based on women. Whereas I think confidence is individual. You should be confident even if women hate you. Confidence should be based around your integrity, you doing what's right for you, even if everyone else disagrees, even if that hot girl gets turned off by it. You should do it if it's right. In my experience, when I make any content about Red Pill or any of the variations like Big Tail, Incel, Manosphere, most of the people who view it and comment on it are people within those communities. For those of you who are going to disagree with me, feel free to. If you can keep it civil, that would be nice. I've tried to be civil with you. But if not, fine, just be honest. But I'm going to ask you one thing only. Any claim you make where you say all women are, I challenge you to provide a scientific citation that backs that up. Because I have looked high and low, and I cannot find a single study anywhere in the history of science that proves all women are a single thing. None. And yet all of Red Pill philosophy, from Tomassi's book through to everything else I've ever read, begs that question. So before you go about disagreeing with what I've said, remember my main disagreement with Tomassi's rules is it's based on the all women are the same concept. So if you can't prove that, then in my opinion these rules fall apart. Thank you for watching. If you don't hate me too much, please subscribe to the channel. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings. I'm open to all feedback. I'm here to learn. And if any of you have watched this and started to realize maybe your views of women aren't actually helping you, you're not having loving connections, you don't find the great confident women out there who make your life better, maybe you need a different way. Get in touch, dan@brojo.co.nz, and we can talk about a different way to view women that can actually give you the love life that you thought only existed in movies. Cheers.